Attention SMP artists, are you looking to take your business to the next level? It's time to fully systemize your studio for growth with the ultimate sales and marketing platform for SMP artists, HighLead. With HighLead, you get everything that you need to save time and effortlessly generate more consultations and bookings on autopilot. And guess what? HighLead is not just a system, but also one of the largest Google ad agencies in the world for SMP professionals. Imagine having a marketing strategy that's tailor-made for the SMP industry, driving high-quality leads right to your studio. Say goodbye to the struggle of finding the latest marketing trend. HighLead has you covered. Invested into your training? Check. Invested into your equipment and studio setup? Check. Now it's time to invest into your marketing strategy. Don't risk your marketing budget on anything else until you've experienced HighLead's growth system and Google Ads services. Don't pass on this special opportunity for listeners of the Scalp Solutions Podcast. Visit GoHighLead.com today to book a free demo now and join the hundreds of SMP artists who've embraced HighLead to thrive in their businesses. On the free no-obligation demo call, a member of HighLead's team will answer all of your questions and help you unlock the potential of your SMP studio by getting you more bookings. Visit GoHighLead.com today.
I am officially recording video on my end. Anthony, before we move forward, do I have your consent to utilize the video and audio footage from this podcast interview for social media purposes?
You sure do.
Absolutely. I know you can trust me that I'm not going to do anything unethical that's going to jeopardize mine or your names and businesses. Excellent. All right, brother. And I'll be coming in shortly. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Scalp Solutions Podcast. I'm your host, David Santiago. Today on the podcast, I'm excited to introduce an industry leader with a wealth of experience and innovation under his belt. Anthonye Angelillo is the president, chief developer, and International Grand Master Educator at the Micropigmentation Academy, where he's been instrumental in shaping the future of the scalp micropigmentation and PMU industries. With over 35 years in dermatology and herbal medicine studies and 15 years specializing in SMP and PMU, Anthony brings an unmatched level of expertise to the table. He's a licensed tattoo artist, esthetician, and the inventor of the groundbreaking tools like the world's first 2RL needles for SMP. His passion for education and artistry shines through in everything that he does. Let's welcome Anthony to the show.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure being here on David's show. And as you know, he introduced me pretty well, actually. I have to give you a hand on that one. Yeah. My knowledge is pretty extensive, and I want to help the community and make everyone's work look better and make life easier for us all. So, Dave, I'm ready for them questions, brother.
Outstanding, brother. That's why we got you here, brother, because we know you're going to give a tremendous amount of value to the community. Let's get right to it, Anthony. What were you doing before you got into scalp micropigmentation, and how did you first discover it?
What was I doing? Well, if you want to go back real far, I was an art major and an engineer. I went into studies for engineering because I didn't think I was going to make money with art. Okay, so the only way you make money in art way back when I was born is if you die. And of course, you know, that's why I was told not to go into art and everything, but that's my passion. But I ended up getting an engineering degree, worked for the government for a while. And I was always into art, always messed with tattoo stuff. But I met my wife now that got me back into this realm of PMU industry. And that's pretty much, I started more in the PMU. And then I honed my skills into the SMP area of it.
Nice. So what was it that actually made you decide to make SMP your career? Like, was there a particular moment that pushed you into that direction?
I was able to release myself of my artistic ability, and that's really my focal. I love art, so I can draw, I can paint, and that's really where my heart is. So I feel at home with it. I don't even have to think about it when I'm doing it. It just comes naturally. So doing something that I love to do and getting paid for it is crazy self-gratification.
Not bad, right? So I want to kind of gravitate into how our initial conversation even started. And this is, you created the first 2RL cartridge for SMP.
Yes.
What made you want to design, not only design your own needle, but what problem were you trying to solve?
The problem I was trying to solve is how the impressions look in the skin, even after they've been in the skin for a year. My issue was that the 3RL cartridge, to me, for one thing, leaves too much pigment behind, and therefore, in the end result, always tends to migrate. Even though pigment in the skin tends to migrate eventually, it just all pigment has a tendency to do that. And some body types will cause it to happen more sooner than others. But long story short, I didn't like the way the impressions were looking in the skin, and the 3RL just does not look like real hair coming out of the skin. And that's what really prompted me to do it, because my work hit a plateau with a 3RL, and I was using single pins for a long time, and single pins obviously gave me the best look besides the 3RL. So the single pins take too long to do and too much trauma to the skin, and it just was more difficult to get it done in a timely fashion. So that's really why I invented the 2RL needle, to make everybody's life easier and make the work look much more realistic.
Yeah, and I remember when we kind of were just a little back and forth in one of the threads, because you actually went down, you went down the rabbit hole, like you got a little bit more philosophical, which I was like, this is great, right? It wasn't. I know sometimes these threads and these Facebook pages, it can somewhat appear that the person is contesting, which we obviously cleared it up. We were saying the same thing, but it was just a miscommunication.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
You went into something that very few people even understand, because you started talking about the follicle, right? And everyone is just under the impression, because we have these 3RLs, right, that it leaves these brown impressions, that our follicles are a perfect circle. And then I guess as the more me and you were kind of like going back, because it kind of got very like, we kind of threw on like our trichology caps, and we're just like, actually, no, it's an S-type wave here, all this other stuff, right? And then when I go into your website, I understood it more, and the design behind it, because you, in fact, were saying that it's not circle, but we were talking about like an oval. And I was essentially saying the same thing. It's just I wasn't calling it oval. I was just saying it's circle within itself. But as I looked at the design, I was like, I think me and this guy are both saying the same thing. But I was incredibly intrigued, because I'll be very honest with you, when I first heard about it, I was just like, okay, this just kind of sounds like a gimmick. Like, where is this gonna be of value to the industry? And then the further that we spoke about this, I was kind of like, holy shit, this makes total and absolute sense. And hence, this is why, we have you here now, because I feel like the rest of the community, the rest of the industry needs to be made aware of the purpose and the meaning of the design behind the needle. Because like I said, some of us are incredibly ignorant, because we just don't know any better. And it's like, well, my trainer told me I have to use the 3RL, and that's all, that I'm going to use. So that being said, Anthony, can you tell us what was the process behind designing the 2RL cartridge, and like how is it that you make sure that this was going to create realistic results?
Wow. I'm glad you kind of asked that, but man, I can tangent in so many different areas. Being an engineer and I have an engineer degree and work for the government, that kind of really helps me put what's in my mind onto paper, and then converted from paper can be put into, machinery, etc. But really what it took is me, basically, I even gotten pigskin and stretch it on a piece of wood so I can work with impressions. But how I did it is basically soldering two needles together and started working at that. But it comes down to not just how the needles pitch, the angle, the taper is a major role in this. But what happens is also the solder connection at the joint where it is, how far it is into the needle, all that plays a role, and everything will change. So if it's not perfectly balanced, even another 3RL needles, I see it all the time. You'll know have you noticed cartridges you buy that start spitting?
Yeah.
Okay. So that plays a role in where the solder joint is and how it comes out and protrudes out of the end of the housing. Also, if the housing is guiding a needle correctly. So all that plays a role in it. And it took many years to deal back and forth with my manufacturer. You got it wrong, fix this, bring the solder down a little bit more, we're talking a matter of like nanometers. It's really small amount of moving, but it makes a huge difference in the outcome. Also texturization, there's so much stuff that comes into play with these 2RLs. It really was long thought out. For instance, if I did a 2RL, I'd make 2RLs also for the PMU industry, but they have to be made slightly different when it comes to the texturization of it. Now, as you know, a single pin will not leave enough of pigment. A 3-pin, from my experience, I don't care what anybody says, tends to leave too much pigment behind. You got 3 areas here that hold pigment here, 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 and in between. The 2RL will hold pigment here and here. So to give it a little edge, I created texturization on it, and that ends up being the right amount of pigment onto the surface of the dermal layer that when it heals out, it doesn't start doing a lot of expansion. It actually tightens up, and it stays pretty refined throughout the life of the SMP. That's what I noticed with my 2RL, and that's how long it took me to develop. This is close to 5 years. And I only really recently released it after I was already using it for 4 years.
So are you saying, so the traditional needles, right? They're essentially, they're smooth and dependent on the taper, right? It depends on how far up, they start tapering down. If I understood you correctly, are you saying that yours has different kind of, they're textured like along as it tapers down?
Along the insertion point, yes.
Oh, outstanding. Dude, I'm gonna have to put one of these under the microscope and look at it. And I'm not even challenging you, but I'm like, that's like.
Let me tell you something. The way we find out now, my needles, and I challenge anybody, and I'll be at meeting in the mines, and I'll be doing, my thing over there. You will not find a needle with such a pristine hit, an accurate hit that leaves the right amount of pigment every single time when it comes to coming in or flicking out or coming in and flicking inward. The bottom line is it looks like a hair follicle because they're directional.
Right.
Okay, you're coming in, it looks like a follicle. You're coming out, it looks like a follicle. So once you get used to using these needles, there's nothing like them. There's people that swear by them. I mean, I've got quite a few religious people that train with these in the UK, and they really been spreading the word about, their work and how it's changed their work.
Yeah, I actually was meaning to, even before we began talking to order. What I'll do is, once we're done here today, I'm gonna make sure I go on and get some, because now I'm intrigued.
Oh, I'll send you some. You don't go about it. I'll send you some.
I appreciate you, brother. Yeah, I definitely want to try them out, man.
Oh yeah.
So your 2RL, it has a special 2-needle inline design, which you spoke of. But how does this design essentially help the artist create better SMP results?
Well, because every hit literally comes in and doesn't look like, let me just kind of magnify this really quick to give you an idea. Over said time, with a 3RL, you kind of have this look here where it's more, this is what tends to look like after a while, and then it starts migrating outward in every direction eventually, because there's just too much pigment in that location, and it does this, like the sun sort of radiates. And these, when you come in, it ends up, and when said and done, magnified, it looks more like this, as
Oh, so
opposed to,
what leaves it kind of
yeah,
like evolves into a stroke, which would still essentially.
but it's not. Yeah,
Right.
correct. It's almost, it's not long enough to be considered a stroke, which we all know certain strokes, like people trying to microblade the scalp, which is idiots, the
Yeah.
most stupidest shit that I've ever seen. You know, it's a
But this
shit mess.
essentially
We all know.
it essentially will kind of make it look like there's a shaft.
Correct.
Not
Correct. And because the
a
skin, we
stroke.
all know, okay, so here, envision this, right? So your skin has like a translucency, right? From the surface of the dermal layer to the outside, okay? The epidermis has 5 individual layers that kind of shed outward all the time, but it becomes translucent. Once all that pigment disappears in that area, you have that pigment sitting on the surface of the dermal layer. So depending on the angle and how you put it in, you can create even more of a follicle look by the way you come in and come out of the skin. And
So
yeah,
instead of coming in at a 90, kind of like what we do now with a 3RL, they try to replicate. You can come at it maybe like at a 45 degree, and it'll give you more of a.
yeah, I mean, that kind of fallacy of coming in perpendicular is kind of, to me, if you look at my work, I very rarely have stuff coming in at 90 degrees. Yeah, sometimes, maybe somewhat in this area sometimes, but I change the pitch and the angle, and I follow follicle direction on the hair with my needles. So the work looks
Makes sense.
really undetectable. If you look at some of my work, and I post a lot of high macro work, you can't tell what's what.
What were one of the biggest challenges that you faced when you were working on this? I know you said this was a 5 years in the making, but what was one of the biggest challenges that you face, and how did you get past it?
Biggest challenges was getting the right, the housing, the end of the tip, right? So if you look at a lot of people's cartridges, not mentioning any names, but a lot of them use a very similar tip because the manufacturers just make a generic tip, then they change the color, next or they might clip the end a bit, and then you have, a lot of them have the same housings, if you really look at it. My housing, if you really look at it, it's not a round tip. It's actually a little square hole inside. I had to redesign my whole housings and the guide tube to hold the needles the way that I wanted to prevent all kinds of cavitation, to prevent spitting. And that was a bitch. I have to be honest with you. That was, man, that I waste a lot of money back and forth because I don't have the manufacturer in front of me, excuse me, where I can just literally, go next door. I have my, what do you call microscope and all my stuff that I work in my shop to kind of mess around with this stuff. But there's a lot of times that I'm changing things around and sending it back, fix this. But I usually design all my stuff and put it in CAD. And then I send my CAD files to my manufacturer. And then it's constantly, then they'll send overnight ship stuff, from out of country back to here. And then I got to deal with it, whether it's right or wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I know that there's a lot of artists, whether they're new or seasoned artists, that have trouble making these follicles, these impressions look realistic. How are these 2RL needles going to help them get better results, especially for the ones that are just starting out? Like, are we going to be practicing the same traditional ways of how we go about our impressions, or with a new, different design needle, are we going to have to learn a different way of making our impressions?
Well, I find that these needles really leave a much smaller, precise impression, which one thing will allow for any possible expansion in long term. But the major thing with these are, if you lighten your mix, let's say you're starting out, I recommend hitting melons at first just to get acclimated to them. But when you're hitting with these, if let's say you lighten the mix, okay, and yes, you can penetrate the skin easier. That's why I'd recommend, for long time people that have been doing this that have a hand for it, you'll still be able to feel the surface of the dermal layer with it. But newbies, I would most definitely recommend getting my guard and you kind of easing into it. And then once you get to leave a nice impression, you keep it at that angle and you keep on going. The guard will assist in that like night and day. That's what I designed that for, besides cutting time down and keeping the work much uniform. I don't care. I'll ask anybody out there, let's say a longtime guys, I'm not mentioning names, that have been doing it for years, okay? Their impressions are not going to look 100% even throughout the whole scalp. They're not. And you'll get those inconsistencies. But what you won't do, if you're using that guard, you'll get a lot less of that inconsistencies and your work looks much better. So I had somebody the other day arguing, oh, this is like a training wheels. Oh, but yeah, blah, blah, blah. Not really, because well, these guys are spending 2, 3, 4 hours to get a head done. I'm doing an hour and 10, hour and 20 minutes, the whole scalp, even if they're on Norwood 6. Let me see them do that with freehand and have their work look really consistent. So the guard is really meant to save people time, less hand fatigue, because now you're not trying to sort of resist. You're doing it a bit, but you have much more control. And just think about this, even for the newbies, you're going to contact point with that guard first, right? And then you kind of ease in. So it stabilizes head. So let's say somebody got shaky hands, right? They can still do this with the guard, because now the guard contacts first and you kind of back in a bit. So you're like this, and if you have to. So it'll sort of level the playing field, but make life a lot easier for everybody. So, and trust me, it does, because I use it myself. And I don't need training wheels. I can do it with or without it, but I notice when I use it, man, I can finish my sessions a lot faster. And we're all in this about the money. So if you're going to spend 2 hours and waste time 2 hours when you can get it done in half the time, or 4 hours and you take 2 hours, wouldn't you want to use a tool?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, listen, if the training wheels are going to get you to the finish line faster, you be an idiot. Especially if you understand business, then you know it's all about the freedom part comes with the time that you have for yourself. And if that's what it's helping you create, then that's a win. And you kind of like my next question was going to be like I was going to talk about this SMP guard, because I saw that on your website as well. And initially when I went on, I read the whole your bio, and I understood the part about the innovation, and then I'm like, holy shit, like this guy's got like an SMP guard. And it's funny because I can guarantee you that everyone has thought about this. Like, why can't someone create something so that it'll help us with our depth, so we're not getting these blowouts, all these inconsistencies. And I kind of wanted you to explain how it helps the artists in the different skill levels, which you pretty much did that. But what made you create the SMP guard? Was it because some problems, some difficulties you were experiencing with the inconsistencies, or you were just tired of seeing shit work?
So feel me rain from behind. Black rain, peace student in the game. Black rain, through the struggles and the strain. Black rain, elements of mine. So feel the rain from behind. Black rain, peace student in the game. Black rain, through the struggles and the strain. Black rain, elements of mine. To feel the rain from behind. I'm sorta like a killer devil rebel. The getaway cars are the sounds of the bass and the treble. Cause I get into mine able and ready, so keep
it's a combination of things. One thing, I'm like, wow, it's taken a long time. You're spending, I would say at the fastest I was getting was like 2 hours, okay? And I'm like, still, that's too long for me, because I'll get antsy after a while, doing this with 2 hours, just kind of, it's enough. And so that was part of the reason why. But others, seeing how much uniform the work could be if there was a little more regulation with it, not saying taking the foolproof out of, for instance, if I designed it with two legs, of course, that would take more of the artistry out, but then you wouldn't be able to pivot and come in at different angles. So I didn't design it to it. Also, you wouldn't be able to ink it with it on. So you can ink this with it on. There's other people trying to knock it off. My attorney's got to deal with them. Some other company trying to do some
other SMP artists, or like some of the big guys?
No, some tattoo or whatever, whatever is it? One of them was a make machines and needles, and obviously they're in China doing it and selling it over here. They're definitely infringing on my patent on that. There's no doubt about that. But long story short, with one pin coming off and the needle say here, you can still ink it on an angle without pulling it off, which takes time. So you sit there, ink it like this, what you see in some of my videos, and you go to work. And the thing about it is, if you really wanted to do a blowout, you could do a blowout by coming back on it. But your hand is basically the other portion of it. So this is the other, so you're resting. You're really not going to be going in there unless you're purposely trying to angle it to get a little deeper. So the guard allows you to get really 3 points of position. Let's say the guard is here, right? So you're at a 90-degree point. You can kind of canter it forward a little bit to go a little shallower, like on the hairline and temporal areas, or you can canter it a little further back from on the top or the back of the head. So there's a lot of different things you can do with it to pivot and change your trajectory. And the point is, you can hold it at that slight change for the area that you're working on. Even though we all know that skin varies from literally from 1 centimeter skin basically changes. So, but it still gets you within an area where you're not going to have these inconsistencies long term. And if you step away from the work and see, it's almost like phasing, almost like camouflaging. You know how you got some darker and lighter areas? You don't get that using this tool. It makes the work much better. Dude, mainly, that's the reason why I developed the tool, to cut the time down, make it easier for everybody, make the work much more uniform, less hand fatigue, and repeatability. I mean, this is very important, repeatability. So
that's awesome, man. So now you go, and after winning the team micro award for innovation and best SMP artist in North America, how did things change for you in your business?
To be honest with you, I wasn't really boastful about any of that. To be honest with you, if somebody comes in here and they see it, oh, what's that? I mean, to be honest with you, it really didn't change much. To be honest with you, I'm more a man of my work. So let my work do the talking, and that's what I tell everybody. Like somebody's arguing the other day on IG, oh, that's a trainer wheel, blah, blah, blah. But look at your work, and then look at my work.
I'm sure that tool probably has trash work.
Oh, yeah. It was nowhere near my level. I mean,
it usually is someone who's done like 2 clients and all of a sudden thinks they know that they're fucking SMP guru.
They don't realize that I love everybody. I really want the guy's work to be better, but if he thinks it's like putting a popsicle stick to the machine, that's what he referred as, and I started cracking up. You'll see it in the thread of IG, and it's kind of like whatever. Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's a little deeper than that, but.
So for SMP artists who want to get better, what are the most important skills they should focus on improving?
Their spacing and their pressure. Spacing and pressure are color is a whole different ball of wax, okay? Their spacing and pressure are the utmost things that are priority in this. Because if the spacing is shit, they can't fragment and create a soft hairline or a harder edge hairline. They can't create density. I'm not one that hits on top of hits. Unless, let's say I hit the spot and then 14 days later it totally disappears, maybe because I was maybe drinking too much coffee that day. The bottom line is if it totally disappeared, then I'll hit that area. I don't like hitting the same spot twice because it makes the impression, the prior impression doesn't look like a hair. So I'm one that, other people say, oh yeah, perfect layering is going on top. Nah, to be honest with you, that creates shit mess.
Got it.
According to my experience. So I don't do that. But everybody has their own, forte or their own kind of technique that they, hold true by. But everything I've been doing is something I've tried and true over years and fixed the mistakes that I've seen countless people make. We all make the mistakes when we start out, There's not anybody in this business could say they never did a blowout.
Yeah, impossible.
And so, but that's the other thing. These guards do prevent a serious blowout. You're not going to get any with the guard on, unless you're ground and pounding.
You got that 45-pound hand.
I've seen some.
Oh, dude, there's some that I've seen, and it's becoming more and more. I don't know. Yesterday, I posted something onto the Team Micro page and the before and after, and it was kind of like a picture of Kamala Harris and President Trump, and it was like, let's talk something. Let's talk something about finally something that I really wanna I really wanted to hear about. Let's stop promoting, shit SMP work, because listen, dude, that could be a whole other topic. because it's not just like the artists. I mean, you got even some of the big brands that they're stamping on these guys, and it's just like
Yep.
they're putting it out there, and it's like, all right, this is shit work. So when we talk about like some guys having 45-pound hand, some of the stuff that I'm sure you're seeing as well too is almost like, dude, how is that even possible? Like I could be blindfolded and I couldn't.
Yeah, it's gross negligence. It's gross negligence. I mean, hitting impressions, and impressions are the most important. The spread of them, how intense they are. Obviously, in these areas here, it's got to be lighter, especially through the temporal areas. You need practice, and I recommend to all the people that you're asking me to talk. What I recommend is practice on melons. Honeydew melons is unforgiving. So if you can make it look good on a honeydew melons, a nice uniform, it'll be at that point in time you'll be ready to work on live people. If you can't make it look uniform, then wait.
Yeah, definitely. Some guys don't want to wait these days. They're ready to just go
Oh,
out.
they just want to poke.
Yes.
And I'm like, the next time I get them coming here, I'm like, can you remove this? Then I got a laser session.
Yeah,
I'm out. What a
laser.
pain in the ass that is, and it hurts.
Yeah. Have you ever got it done to yourself just so that you can let your client know, like, listen, this is the kind of intensity you're about to experience when you get
Well,
laser?
to be honest with you, I've lasered my whole side because
So
my wife used my side as a brown patch area for testing pigments out.
You were the guinea
Fucking
pig.
shit hurts. Fucking hurts.
I got 10 zaps on my head just so that I could knowledgeably prepare them.
Yep.
And,
Did you get the zaps with pigment in it though, or no?
No.
Okay, so hold on a second. So it's a total night and day difference between hitting pigment in your scalp and hitting your scalp with no pigment in it, because the pigment explodes
Pops
under the skin. So the larger the pigment deposit, the much harder it hits and the more it hurts. Trust me on that. So yeah. Ooh, here, have somebody do a blowout on you, then get it removed.
No, I don't need, dude, it was a horrible. I remember getting zapped, and I remember feeling it like on my small toe, and not to be, not too TMI, but like I felt it kind of like at the tip of my man parts, and I was just like, holy shit, like somebody has to sit through this for like a whole 45-minute, half an hour session.
This dude bent my fucking chair. He bent the handrails in. Yeah. You should have seen him. I told him I was going to post it. He's like, if I can get his okay to post it, you guys will crack up.
Poor bastard.
Yeah.
So Anthony, you've been a big innovator in the SMP industry. Where do you see the next big changes happening, and how are you staying ahead of the game?
Well, I'm constantly innovating. I mean, I have tons of stuff I invented, more that I haven't even released yet. I sleep at night and it hits me, and all of a sudden I draw it, and the next thing, I got to do that. I've got ink cups that I invented also. That might be the next thing I put out. Easy, accessible ink cups that are going to make life a lot easier. You know what I mean? Some more bent tips and shit when you put your, needle in.
We've all done that.
Yeah, we all have, or you get interrupted and stuff like that. I'd have to say that to stay ahead of the game, it's just me staying true to myself and true to my work ethics. I don't think it's really a competition out there, to be honest with you. But I do constantly keep myself acquainted and ahead of the game. I'm working on pigment right now, and it's not conventional pigment either. Pigment is the big problem with SMP right now. I achieved to fix the impressions. Now I have an idea about pigment, and I'm waiting for a manufacturer that wants to formulate what I have in his head. Because if they do, there will be no migration ever. But it's a whole different thing. And man, like I said, I'm good with bio, but the chemistry aspect of it, it's something I need to pair up with somebody, with a manufacturer that's willing to step way outside the box to do what I want done. And if they do, and if it happens, we'll never have migration with SMP ever again.
So do you think with what it is that, and I know obviously we don't want to get too much out there because this is something that still works, but do you think that it would be effective to the point that even if someone who's new, who still hasn't really controlled their depth or have that understanding, and they do go deep enough, do you think with what it is that you're looking to formulate would be able to combat that as well?
Yeah, I think it would be, because if it's not going to migrate whatsoever and stays within itself, migration. Let's say a blowout, right? A blowout because of a heavy ink deposit would also know where else to go, but it starts expanding. But it will cut down on what looks to be a blowout, because it's not going to expand and get like this big ass black ball of shit underneath the skin. That's not going to happen. So in that aspect, yes, it would regulate a lot of that too. I wouldn't say it may rule it completely out, but it wouldn't expand. I mean, I can't get into the formulation of what I have in mind, but it would definitely regulate that a hell of a lot more than the pigment nowadays. I can't stress how much the pigment is a problem factor right now. I mean, there's other pigments out there. I know Stevie G's got a pigment line out there. I have yet chance. He's supposed to send me stuff. I haven't yet received it yet, but if I use it,
to me, Stevie G, stop playing with us. Send us your stuff.
Yes,
right?
if you want, hey, you know my needles work good. I send him some now. I'll send him some more needles and give me your pigment. And listen, there's no sense of recreating the wheel, but I don't mind work with somebody to better something also either. So it's just I engross myself in this. I eat, sleep, and shit SMP basically. Not just that, also PMU, because I've done things, like I said, I invented PMU needles too. Besides
Did you?
PMU needles and SMP needles.
My man, you don't mess around.
And my PMU needles, when it comes to making a stroke, my wife does all the the nano brows.
Yeah.
So these leave the right amount of pigment and much faster than a single pin. A lot of the girls are using a single pin. Right. It takes too long to do those brows. You use my 2-pin here, shit's changing, brother.
How do you balance creating, these new tools like the 2RL and the SMP guard and your work as an SMP artist? Like, do these things do they help each other out?
It's definitely stressful, and you got kids at home, and then yeah, my academy's big. I have like 10,000 square foot building. We have multiple, training rooms. We have service rooms, and we have rentals here. It's quite big. It's definitely a big nut to chew, I have to say. But I have somebody here that I've been training for the past 2 years under my belt that is getting really good. So that can take some of the load off of me. That's how I'm handling
it. What advice would you give to SMP artists who want to create their own tools or make big changes in the industry?
Don't let nobody tell you you're full of shit. Stand true to your feelings and get it on paper. I mean, I'm pretty humble. So if somebody ever inbox me or ask me, hey, how do you do it or whatever, you got to hire a patent attorney, but if you don't know CAD like I know it, you'll have to hire somebody CAD, and then you got to worry about telling them that, because then they'll steal your fucking design, because that's how people are, So it is this kind of thing. I've had people steal my designs and stuff like that, but you learn from your mistakes. So you have them sign an NDA and non-disclosure agreement. You have an attorney draw it up, and you dot your I's and cross your T's. That's the only thing you can do, and that still ain't gonna stop them from stealing your shit. Just unfortunately.
Dude, even with the trademarking, we send cease and desist. We just stopped doing it. Some of these people in the industry, they don't care. They don't have any. And then again, at some point, is it really worth it when it's someone that's nowhere near?
Yeah,
It just goes to show that some people don't give a shit.
Yeah, they don't give a shit. There's innovators and perpetrators.
My man, say that one more time.
There's innovators and perpetrators.
We
are innovators.
I wish I had a bomb over here. You know how the DJs do on Hot 97 when they say something? You got
I mean, the bottom line is I've learned in this business, and some, you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt. Not everybody's going to like you, even if you're not doing anything to them. There's just people that tend to hate each other, I mean, for no reason at all. I mean, I don't have any problems with any artist out there. I really, if I can help make your life easier, fine. You know what I mean? I'm extremely humble. If somebody wants to talk to me, they feel like they can't, please reach out. I'm a human being, man. I joke and screw around and make jokes. Some you might like, some you might not like, but it is what it is. You get
That's
what you get.
life, right? Yeah. You get like I tell my daughters, you get what you get, and you don't get upset.
Yeah, it's an Italian thing. I can't help it. It's hard for me to not talk with my hands. My wife always yells at me, "Why you always move your hands?" Well, because I can't help it.
I'm saying that's good. That shows that we're charismatic. That's what I was told when I went to a public speaking school. They say when you speak with the hands like that and you can't control it, that's actually good. That just shows how charismatic you are. So that's actually a good thing. That's good thing. So
that's how I am when I'm at like the last meeting of mine, man. I was like, "Ooh."
Yeah, but that's how you gain attention as well too. If you just stand there and just talking all monotone, people are gone.
I'm high strung, so it's almost like I'm live wire. I can't stay calm. You know what I mean? I can't just sit still, and that's maybe that's ADHD, whatever it is, but it allows me to produce incredible work because I'm in and I'm out.
Yeah, you make it work. Anthony, before we wrap things up, I want you to tell us what is the best advice you can give SMP artists who want to take their skills and business to the next level.
Ooh, without embellishing myself. Let's keep it neutral. To practice. I have to say that practice, even myself, I practice in some obscure places. But I think the more you practice, the more you hone your skills, the better. Now, if you can practice on somebody's scalp, that's even better. Now, let me just kind of give you a tidbit. When I used to practice on scalps, right? I used to practice on scalps where I used no pigment, okay? And you wear magnifiers and you're hitting that skin, right? And if you're bringing blood up when you're hitting that skin, you're going too fucking deep. Lighten up. So you can practice on people's scalps just so you're not using pigment. And even if they have hair, just practice in the scalp. If you're going too deep, you're gonna be bringing, little blood up and pus and everything else. You're going too deep. Lighten up. Practice like that if you can. That's one of the best ways to practice. If they trust you, you're not going to leave pigment behind because you're using no pigment. So I recommend that also. That really helped me a lot, to be honest with you, with gaining the exact depth and regulating depth. And as you know, different people have different depths and a different feeling, so it gives you good practice like that. And that's something I'd recommend on any of you artists out there that are really trying to hone your skills. Borrow somebody that doesn't mind getting their head poked. If anything, it'll help follicle replication and get your follicles feeding more nutrients to them if you hit them with the pin. So happy pinning, if you know what I mean.
Outstanding. Great advice. And now that I got you, speaking about advice, I know you're going to be coming out. You're actually going to be at this year's Meeting of the Minds going down in October in New York City. Will you be there just as a guest capacity, or are you going to be speaking?
I'm not just I'm a key sponsor, but also me. I can't keep my mouth shut, so obviously I'm going to be speaking. And speaking, I'll probably put something pretty interesting together. I like dramatic stuff, and I like being able to captivate the audience. And of course, me, I'm a master at answering any questions, as they found out last time.
Outstanding. That's awesome. Well, I'll be there myself. I'm actually looking forward to meet you in person.
Yeah, likewise. I'm looking forward to meeting you.
Can you let everyone, the listeners, know where they can connect with you? What are your social media handles?
The main one is True Follicle on IG. Also, I run Micropigmentation Academy. That's micropigmentation.academy. Also, if you look up on the web, I own the domain micropigmentation.academy. That's how you find us. Also, the same thing on Facebook. And we also have a YouTube channel with approximately creeping on 8,000 subscribers now on YouTube.
That's great. Congratulations. Good for you. And what about if they want to get the 2RL needles and the SMP guard?
They can get it from our website. I also have a Shopify account. I can also leave links. I can give you a link where they can.
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
We'll put it at the end of the podcast or something like that where they can click on it. And also on my links, if they click on, especially on my website, I have a lot of informative videos on how to use the needles and guard properly. So I'm always posting videos. And of course, if somebody ever had a problem, I've been known to one-on-one, you can FaceTime me and I'll show you what you're doing wrong and kind of walk you through it. So I'm one of those guys.
Outstanding. Well, there you go, folks. So like Anthony said, he's going to give me those links. I'm going to be posting them down in the bottom of the description. So whether you're seeing this on YouTube or you're listening to it online on Spotify, on iTunes, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, whatever it is that you listen to, I'm going to be adding those links into the description. Anthony, thank you one more time for jumping on the podcast.
Dave, I
Really
appreciate you. You're a great person. And
brother.
advice as closing everybody, you guys happy poking, make it happen, and stay true to your beliefs and never give up on yourself. You guys take care.
Outstanding. Guys, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Scalp Solutions Podcast. Until the next time, peace.